So let's start. Welcome, everybody, in this ninth session of our series. And today we are talking about Sarah's favorite topic. And we've known each other for, I think, about 7, 8 years now. And one of the first things that struck me, I remember we were there with Noemi having sushi somewhere outside in Sydney. Do you remember, Sarah?
Yes, I do.
And one of the first things that I met when I met Sarah was her openness and her curiosity. So it was such a joy to meet you. It's such a nice energy that it gives to be with somebody who is really interested and who really wants to know. And you can sense that they are not hung upon their own experiences and thoughts. And today's topic is to allow yourself to remain open and curious. And of course, with social media and algorithms and stuff like that, we get a lot of information being sent to us. And there's a lot of the way our psychology works and how our brains work is used a lot to guide us in a certain direction, depending on the sender of the information. So one of the skills to be dealing with chaos with inner peace, we think, is to remain open and curious. So you're less receptive for all these impulses. And then being open and curious, that's one of Sarah's favorite topics. And whenever I find myself being judgmental or being close and think, oh, not something new again, there's Sarah's voice in my head, inviting me to be open and to be curious again. Sarah, can you please share some of your thoughts because we all want to learn from you and how you do this and what is important to you?
Yeah. So, I think for me, curiosity is pure playfulness to me. It's like if there's somebody sharing an idea, what are all the possibilities with that idea? And I've noticed that if you engage in a conversation where there's a lot of difference of opinion, you can get stuck in advocating your perspective. And meanwhile, there's this rich resource here of people who come from all different walks of life, all different experiences, all different exposures. And if we can stay open to explore what's bringing them to their position, that can open up so many different ways of thinking about something. It doesn't mean necessarily to adopt their position, but to be stimulated like a spark. What does that idea open up the possibility to? And it's interesting because we were sharing something. I was just recently listening to the Finnish president speaking about, actually, he was making a comparison between Australia and Finland and the current things going on in the world. Not that I agree with everything that he had to say, but he was talking about being calm in the presence of what's going on. And many of you would know, because many of you are in Europe, that the Russians are building up all of their military bases along the Finnish border. And but the Finnish president was very calm about it, and he started speaking about his perspective on it. And I went, wow, that's a very different perspective. And then I got curious and did a whole lot of research trying to find out more about him and what informed his thinking. And again, I don't agree with everything, but it just opened my eyes and opened my thinking. And I actually started to feel a lot more calm in the presence of what he was talking about. So I could, for a moment, step into a space that was very different from what was happening before, because I was just wanting to understand what was informing all of that. And it brought to mind this idea of what's going on in the world. We can see at the moment, there's this rising up of, let's say, the shadow sides of humanity, the things that we would rather not have to deal with or rather not contend with. We'd rather have peace and harmony and life going on the way that we've had to enjoy. And yet something is afoot, something's changing in a very big way. And things that have been repressed are now coming to the surface. And it brings up this idea, how do we stay open and curious when that sort of thing happens? What's informing it? What is provoking people to have the position that they have? Because most people come to their position very honestly. They've had some experience or some exposure. So the big question for us is, how do we stay open to that? Because one of the things about an evolving consciousness is our capacity not to collapse into polarities, that we can actually stay open to, there may be two very, very, very opposing ideas that might seem to have no commonality in them whatsoever. But if we can pull back our perspective so we can start seeing those two things at the same time, and that expands our consciousness to be able to hold contradictory ideas at the same time and look for what is emerging out of that contradiction, because it points to the pathway through. So this is my great passion about staying open and curious, because what comes when you stay with that polarity and you stay with that expanded perspective, something new emerges that was unexpected. It's not something that comes from what you know. It doesn't come from something you could predict. It literally arises out of that space where you hold these two contradictory kind of ideas. And to me, that's, well, it's just like, well, I'm like a kid, you know. It's like a little bit of magic is happening in that moment. And I love that magic that happens when you do that. That's my passion about this. If I can stay, and I know when I don't stay open and curious, I get fearful and I get anxious and I can get strident and I can get opinionated and I can go into those very constrained places of myself rather than be in this joy of discovery that comes from holding that openness. And I'd rather be in that joy of discovery than in that other place, which, you know, I'm not my best self, I'd have to say. Yeah. So
I love what you said, not to collapse into polarities. Like the concept of collapsing into polarities is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I also wanted, you can tell it's your favorite topic.
Thank you for giving me the space to indulge in my favorite topic.
Of course. And also, I think if you hold on to your own opinions and to your own experience, it's always informed by the past and therefore not in the present. And life takes place in the present. So you're not doing yourself any favor holding on to whatever you think you know that is true.
Yeah, and I think that's the piece, you know, if we already know, the only way we can already know is the collective history that we've been exposed to, our collective experience, or other people's opinion, which are not our experience. Yeah. Whereas if we can stay in that open and curious state and be unattached to our history and experience, I don't mean detached from it, but unattached to it. And then something new becomes possible. And, you know, the basic human impulse is evolution. You know, as a child is curious about the world. As an adult, you know, we only enjoy things that expand us. Anything that causes our expansion is something that gives us liveliness. So then how do we stay in the world where we're actually in that expansion? That's important.
So we have thrown a couple of big concepts at you in those 10 minutes. We talked about shadow work, about polarities, about consciousness. And as you know us, we like to make it practical as well. So we're going to open the breakout rooms and you'll be in groups of 3 or 4. And the invitation is to pick something you feel strongly about. So pick something that you're not open and curious. You feel strongly, you already have your mind set. And then include the opposite. So not either or, but include the opposite. Both are true at the same time, even if they are contradictory to each other. So you include the opposites and then reflect together on what does it take to do that. We're talking about skills in these 3 last sessions. So what does it take to include the opposite? I think you'll have a marvelous time. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms and you'll have, well, about 12, 13 minutes. Enjoy yourselves in the breakout rooms. So welcome back, everybody. And everybody stayed in the breakout room until the last moment. So
That's been a great conversation.
Yeah, that tells me that you had great conversations. And I think we have time for 1 or 2 reflections. So if there's anything you'd like to share, please raise your hand. Jan, you are first. You were really quick.
Yes,
So please
because
unmute.
it's too late last week.
Yeah.
I wanted to be here now. Because yeah, something again like last week came to mind when Sarah was explaining the topic, is that I absolutely encourage being open and curious, and I 100% agree that it's an antidote to polarization, understanding different perspectives and being really, really curious. In our discussion, we also saw that that it helps narrow down a personal opinion. We were talking about cheap flights and the impact on tourism in specific regions. When we narrowed it down, it was not only about the cheap flights, because there's also an advantage in that, but what's important for me, it's that it's being open and curious about polarization and also taking your own stance. That it's not only about knowing, but if you want to advance in a specific topic, you need to take your own stance and what is your personal opinion about it. And then 2 interesting things that were added there was first, are you part of the conflict or not? That's a very important thing, because you have to regulate yourself if you're part of the conflict, if you want to call it. If you're a facilitator, it's much easier. And the second one, what do you need to embrace the other side, is to be safe or to stay safe. If you belong to a group and you can be open and curious, will you still belong to the group afterwards if you ask that kind of questions?
And it's very important, even curiosity about what is my belonging to the group and what is my not belonging to the group, because it doesn't mean we subsume to a group, you know, so we can move between groups depending on which loyalties we're paying attention to. Nice.
Yeah, and is it worth speaking your own mind? Is it worth not being part of the group anymore? Because sometimes it may be worth it, sometimes it may be life-threatening.
And that's even a question. Would I risk my life for it?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jan. Nice to hear from you. Thank you. And Elisa has raised her hand as well. Elisa? Just in a minute, because we're going to close.
We took it gave me big joy to do this exercise, because we chose a polarity, Trump and his politics, and for the first side was very easy to be against him and about his personality and his power play, and then we took the other side and it really opened up the space. Wow. And the skill it took was not skip the nuance, skip the but, skip the
Right.
So taking the other stand was really, really interesting.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Sarah, is there anything you'd like to say? Just a couple of words before we close.
I'm just so excited about, there's all these things in the chat. And I just love to continue the conversation because I'm totally stimulated by what's coming out of it. So all I would say is I wish you joy in exploring what becomes possible. when you
Yeah.
so, and I loved Jan's perspectives that you add, which is the structure that sits around being open and curious. It's
Yeah.
to expand so that more possibilities become available. Yeah.
So I wasn't exaggerating when I said that it's your favorite topic. Next week will be the last session. And the last session, the topic of the last session will be what else can it be than stepping into the future? So I hope to see you next week for the last session. And for now, have a lovely week. Let's say bye and hi, and I hope to see you next week.
See you
Bye
next
bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel energized. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining.